Well, we're going to go ahead and let's get started. Let's pray. Father God, we lift up this time to you. Lord, we just pray that we would just take this time now just to leave whatever cares or worries or anything else just to the side. God, we give it all up to you. Just that we would be listening for you, looking for you. We know that you pursue after us. Father, we know that you have a heart for marriage and that you have a heart for us and that you seek after us, that you long for us to pursue after you in all that we do. So we lift up this time to you. And just pray that our words glorify you and lift you up. And that you would speak to us, Lord, wherever we're at. In the name of Jesus, amen. We all good? Okay. Yeah, come on in. There's some more seats out here. So right now, what I want you to do is, you don't have to say it out loud, but I'm going to encourage you. Think of one positive thing that your spouse does that's really meaningful to you. Okay, think of one positive thing that your spouse does that's meaningful to you. Okay. You don't have to say it out loud. We're going to use it later, but just kind of be thinking about it and put it away in the back of your head. Where we started last week was in Genesis chapter 2. And we're going to pick up in Genesis chapter 3 this morning. We're just going to jump into it. In Genesis chapter 3, if you want to go along with me, I'm just going to run through this really quickly. And sometimes I talk really fast, but if you're reading along, some of the words may make sense. Now the serpent was more crafty than any of the wild animals the Lord God had made. He said to the woman, "Did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden?" The woman said to the serpent, "We may eat fruit from the trees in the garden, but God did say, you must not eat fruit from the tree that is in the middle of the garden, and you must not touch it, or you will die." "You will not certainly die," the serpent said to the woman. "For God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be open, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." When the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food, and pleasing to the eye, and also desirable for gaining wisdom, she took some and ate it. She also gave some to her husband, who was with her, and he ate. Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they realized they were naked, so they sewed fig leaves together and made coverings for themselves. Then the man and his wife heard the sound of the Lord God as he was walking in the garden in the cool of the day, and they hid from the Lord God among the trees of the garden. But the Lord God called to the man, "Where are you?" He answered, "I heard you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid." And he said, "Who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree that I commanded you not to eat from?" And the man said, "The woman you put here with me, she gave me some fruit from the tree, and I ate it." Then the Lord God said to the woman, "What is this you have done?" And the woman said, "The serpent deceived me, and I ate." So the Lord God said to the serpent, "Because you have done this, cursed are you above all livestock and all wild animals. You will crawl on your belly, and you will eat dust all the days of your life. And I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. And he will crush your head, and you will strike his heel." To the woman he said, "I will make your pains in childbearing very severe. With painful labor you will give birth to children. Your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you." To Adam he said, "Because you listened to your wife, and ate fruit from the tree about which I commanded you, you must not eat from it. Cursed is the ground because of you. Through painful toil you will eat from it. You will eat food from it all the days of your life. It will produce thorns and thistles for you, and you will eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your brow you will eat your food until you return to the ground, since from it you were taken, for dust you are, and to dust you will return." And we know that when the serpent, Satan, was talking to Eve, we know that he was deceiving her. I mean, he even started off with saying, "Oh, God said you can't eat any of it." And obviously, well, you could eat any of it except for one tree. And she knew this, so she came back with it. And where we're going with this is, once they ate the fruit that they were told not to do, what happened? They what?
They noticed that they were naked.
They noticed they were naked. Yeah. Was that a problem before?
I don't know why it was problematic.
So, don't know. I didn't know if you meant, there's the microphone, say it a little bit louder. Yeah, because just before this, what? Everything was good. God had declared it good. They were naked and unashamed. Chapter 2. What else do we see in this passage? Yes?
They were ashamed. So
They were ashamed.
They felt shame. They felt like they sinned.
Yes. Sin was definitely there. Shame came with it. Yeah. Anything else? Blame for sure, right? Blaming the woman, blaming the serpent. Blame was a part of it. Yeah, there's a few chairs up here. Come on in. The other thing we hear is because there was sin, the way they saw things before was different from the way they saw things after they ate from it. And actually what it says is what? They heard the Lord God walking in, and they were, that's actually what it said to them. We knew it was you. We're hiding from you. We're afraid. That's why we covered ourselves up. Fear. Awareness of ourselves, or even this self-centeredness. Because before this, they weren't seeing things just centered around them. They were seeing it centered around God. And God said before this, what? It was all good. It's all good. It's very good. He created it. Now, the other place we want to go with this is just kind of continue through thinking, okay, here's what came in when sin came in. Fear, hiding, covering up, running. Not even just running from God, but even with each other. A lot of blaming, accusing. If you got your Bibles, Ephesians chapter 4. And this is not a passage just on marriage, but we're not looking for it, just what does it say to us just as husband and wife. But look and see, what is it saying to us as believers? And so in Ephesians chapter 4, starting at verse 20, it says, that, however, is not the way of life you learned when you heard about Christ and were taught in him in accordance with the truth that is in Jesus. You were taught with regard to your former way of life to put off your old self, which is being corrupted by its deceitful desires, to be made new in the attitude of your minds, and to put on the new self, created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness. Therefore, each of you must put off falsehood and speak truthfully to your neighbor, for we are all members of God. In your anger, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you are still angry. Do not give the devil a foothold. Anyone who has been stealing must steal no longer, but must work. Do something useful with their own hands, that they may have something to share with those in need. Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. Do not grieve the Holy Spirit of God, with whom you were sealed for the day of redemption. Get rid of all bitterness, rage, and anger, brawling and slander, along with every form of malice. Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other, just as in Christ God forgave you. And it's not that these two passages are, directly, linked, and yet they are, because they're all in Scripture. And it's saying, put off this old self, put on this new self. And this isn't just, as a husband or as a wife, but it's speaking to us as believers. And if we keep reading, because sometimes I think we kind of go through and we think, that Paul was writing chapter 4, or chapter 3, or chapter 8, and he didn't break it up. He continues on. Actually, when you keep going into chapter 5, this is where he tells us to love one another. And he actually says it the same way we read last week when he was speaking to husbands. He says in the very beginning of the chapter, he says to love one another the way that Christ loved you and gave himself. Not just a message for the husbands, but it's a message for all of us as believers. Can I love others the way Christ loves me? And the word here for love is this word agape, or agapeo, which is the verb form of it, to love. Agape is kind of what we hear a lot, which is the noun, meaning love. It's a love, or to have love for someone. And it's this verb, to love others, which isn't, it's different from phileo, which is this brotherly love. It's this love that says, I care more about you, and I'm willing to care at where it costs me. Your interests are more important than my interests. That's kind of what we want to look at today. How do we do this? And if everything is going great in a marriage, it's kind of easy to do. It's easy to love people who love you. It's kind of hard to love people when you're not sure they love you or they're not treating you in a way that maybe love you. And so we're going to talk about 2 skills today to kind of help us do this. How do we love them in a way that's meaningful? How do I put off this old self, what we hear in Genesis 3? Because it's not what we were created for. How do we love people in a way, especially how do we love our spouse in a way that their interests are more than my interests? Can I hear their interests? Because when I'm honest, when I'm hurt or I'm angry, like we talked about last week, man, my tendency is not to reach out to her and say, how can I understand you more? It's to say, no, I'm hurt and I'm angry, thinking it's going to help me get more of what I want. And so these 2 skills we're going to talk about at one level, they're just communication skills. These are things I teach to I teach to couples, I teach it to parents with their kids, I teach it to employees, co-workers who are working together. They're skills, they're probably even things you've heard before. We're going to talk about them, but then after we talk about them, we're going to talk about how do we take these and how do we make them more of a tool that we can use in marriage? How can we go deeper? Okay. The first one is this, and it's using I feel statements. And you may have heard this before because most time when we're angry, we don't talk about us, we talk about who? The other person. You, they, she, he. You know, they did this, they always. And it's kind of the way we talk as Americans. We think, or I think if I tell you how bad they are or what they did, you understand I'm mad or I'm hurt or I'm angry or I'm frustrated or something. But you understand by talking about what they did. And a lot of times when we're talking with people, if I come at you telling you what you did, you don't just sit there and take it, you get defensive. Or you protect yourself. Even if you don't react out, you still feel it. You have to protect yourself. When I tell you you did this or you always or you never. And so it doesn't start with you, it actually starts with me, I. And what I want to do is I want to name the feeling, okay? And this is hard, for some of us because some of us are more thought-oriented than we are feeling-oriented. And if you ask some people, what they feel, they don't tell you feelings, they tell you thoughts. I think this, or, how do you feel about this? Well, I think it's going to work out great. Well, that's not a feeling, that's a thought. Some people are just more feeling-oriented. If you ask them about what they think, they tell you feelings. I'm really upset about this. Which is okay. It doesn't mean right and wrong. It just means we're different. But instead of me telling you what you did wrong, or what I think about you, what if I start with me and just name my feelings? And so because it's naming feelings, what's going to go in this blank is going to be what kind of words? Emotions. I feel, or if it's past tense, felt, happy, sad, attacked, frustrated. It's an emotion word. Can I name the emotion? Okay. And there's nothing magical like this. And even if you use these, the other person, can they still be offensive? Yeah. Because if I'm telling you I feel attacked, who am I saying is attacking you? And you're thinking, well, you shouldn't feel attacked because I'm not attacking you. But can I name it? Can I name how I feel? I feel or I felt. And stick the emotion word in there. And it may be one word, it may be a couple words. If it's like a whole long sentence that comes in here, it's probably not a feeling. You know what I mean? I feel like you never listen to me, you just don't care. And that's not really my emotions, even though it has that word feel. When we use this phrase, feel like, this automatically makes this not a feeling. And part of what we want to do, does this sound familiar? Part of what we want to do here is we want to separate out what I think, what I feel, and what I do. Not that there's anything wrong with thinking. Thinking is very good. Thinking helps, But sometimes our thinking is wrong. And if I think it, I'm going to feel it. The problem is if my thoughts are wrong, my feelings are wrong. If you think that I stole money from you, how are you going to feel? It's okay, you can say we're all Christians, but if I stole money from you, how do you feel? Upset, mad, angry, yeah. But what happens a couple days later and you find the money was in your pants pocket and I didn't really steal it? How do you feel?
Shame.
Yeah. Even if you never said anything to me, when you thought it, you felt it, and when you think something different, you feel something different. If we think it, we're going to feel it. It's the way God made us. The problem is not everything we think is right. And so we have these feelings, and that's why we're saying we want to separate out what I think, what I feel, and what I do. Okay? And here we're naming what? Our feeling part of it. Not that thinking is bad. I don't want you to walk away saying, man, he's telling us not to think. No, I'm actually saying to think. We just want to think a little bit more clear. We want to do what it says in this passage here to change our minds. But if I stick like in here, it stops being a feeling. It becomes a thought. I feel like you don't care. I feel like you're not listening. I feel like I'm not important to you. I feel those aren't feelings. Those are thoughts. And they're not even about me. They're really more about who? You. What I think about you. It just may not be right. So I don't want to use this phrase, feel like. I want to name it. Okay? So it's going to be a few words. I felt frustrated and attacked. I felt hopeful and happy. I felt excited, The other thing we want to do is we want to connect it to something. And not necessarily like, when like Thursday at 2 o'clock I felt happy. You can do that if you want. But it's connected to something. I felt happy when I got a letter in the mail. I felt sad when it didn't work out. I felt attacked when you yelled. I felt frustrated when you left the cap off the toothpaste. But we want this to be just the black and white part of it. Not what I think about it, but just the thing that happened. And we can argue, did you really yell, or is your voice just kind of loud, or did you really slam the door, did the wind catch? We can argue about those things, but it gets so far away from what we're really talking about here. Can I connect it to something? It's just black and white, just facts. Okay? But the other thing we want to do is this, period, stop. Because if I go past this, I'm going to get into what? My thoughts, what I'm thinking. I felt angry when you yelled, because as soon as I get into that, it's not my feeling, it's what I think. And you're going to get more defensive when I'm telling you, what I'm thinking, because part of it's going to be wrong, if not all of it. So I want to do this, I want to stop here, And I want to connect it to something, but I want to stop, period. Okay? Now the second one, and we're going to run through these really quick, but then we're going to bring them in and put them into use. And I'm saying that to you now, so you kind of get ready and prepare yourselves. Second one is this. It's what we call paraphrasing. And I should have told you a few minutes ago, I've got this on notes. I'm going to give it to you before you leave. Okay? So if you're like trying to write it all down, don't feel like you have to. You can't take pictures if you want or something. Just don't get me in the pictures. But I'll give you these notes that are pretty detailed whenever you leave. Okay? But paraphrasing is this. It's when person A says something, and then person B paraphrases it, reflects it back. Okay, so you're saying this. And then person A can verify, clarify, yes it is, or no it's not. And then person B can respond to it. And it sounds like, man, that's just going to like drag everything out. And I'm not saying like do this all the time. Hey, honey, dinner's ready. Okay, so you're coming to dinner. It doesn't have to be with every little thing that comes up. But the big stuff, when you're talking about sex, when you're talking about finances, when you're talking about what happened, when you're talking about this kind of stuff. And this is a great sentence to stick in here. A very first sentence. I felt frustrated when you left the cap off your face. Well, you just think I'm supposed to. That's not a paraphrase. Okay. I felt frustrated when you left the cap off the toothpaste. Okay, so you were upset when I didn't do that. And if you'll do it, it almost becomes second nature. And the reason I teach this, just like I said, this is a communication skill. It's nothing magical. It's nothing just for marriage. But it's a great way to communicate. One of the reasons is because for most of us, about 2 seconds in it, even if you're saying I feel and you're telling me you're feeling something inside of me says it's not my fault and I didn't do it, I didn't prove it, I'm not even listening to what you have to say. I'm thinking my defense, I felt frustrated when you left the cap off. Well, you didn't put the orange juice away, Well, you didn't put gas in the car. Well, your mom's chicken tastes like this, and you're not even talking about what we were talking about. We're so far from it. But can we stay on task? And so this, great sentence sticking here, but if I listen to your whole sentence, and I can tell you what you just said to me, hopefully you're going to feel what? Validated, understood. And this is where we want to change it. This is where we want it to be more than just a communication skill. Because especially when we're fighting or we're not getting along, when we're hurt, when we're pulling away, or when we're lashing out, for most of us the goal has to change. Because when we get into a fight, the goal is usually what?
To win.
To win. To win. Yeah. And when it's two heavyweight fighters and they come into the ring, the goal is supposed to be to win. They don't take off their gloves and look at each other and hold hands and say, gee, I hope I don't hurt you. So, no, they're in there to win. They want to walk away the winner. They want the other person on the ground. I don't want to say dead, but they want them knocked out, lying, unconscious. They want to know I win and I won. They want to win for two heavyweight fighters. But if our goal in marriage is just to win, for me to be right and for you to be wrong, that means that one of us is going to win and one of us is going to lose. Even if I am absolutely 100% right in what I'm saying, I'm still going to lose. I've got to give up that right to be right. The goal has to change from being right or from winning to connecting and understanding. Can I connect with you? Can I take off the gloves? Can I put down the hair? Can I look into your eyes? Can I tell you what I'm feeling? Can I hear back what you're saying to me? Can I reflect it back to you? And so one of the reasons is, can I hear all of it and can I validate you? It doesn't even mean that I agree with it. I don't mean that like facetiously, like, yeah, just, okay, you're saying this, forget that. No, but to really sincerely say, okay, so you're telling me this. This is how you feel. This is what's going on with you. Now, the other reason I teach this to people is because sometimes person A says it right, but person B hears it wrong. If you catch me and I'm in the middle of something, I'm working on taxes, or I'm listening to something, or if I'm listening to music, so I can come in and say, hey, pick me up at 4 o'clock or something. I hear 4 o'clock and pick me up, but 2 seconds later I haven't really heard it because I'm focused on whatever it is I'm focused on. But if I have to stop what I'm doing and say, you're telling me to pick you up at this time, I've heard it, you know that I've heard it. Sometimes we just hear it wrong, because our minds are over here and they're over there and we're not even in the same ballpark. Sometimes we hear it right, but person A says it wrong. They may even know what they mean to say and it just doesn't come out right. One time I was going out to lunch with this pastor and we got in the car and we were going, and he said, he was a pastor, he said, I've got this lady in my church who loves hurting people. And I said, uh-oh. She loves hurting people. And when I reflected it back, he heard it. He said, oh no, it's not that she loves hurting people, she loves people who are hurting. Very different message. But it makes sense to say it that way, and he knew what he meant, Sometimes we just say it wrong. Sometimes we know the context we're thinking in, we think we know it, you're hearing it like me, that you may not be. And so for this person to say it, the other reason I share this with people is for this reason. When it just stays about winning, I don't really want to reflect back to you what you're saying. I want to get my point across. And in about 3 seconds or 6 seconds, we're not even talking about where we started off at. We're talking about everything else, and we're bringing up the past. Can I tell you what you said? And then this is where a person A can verify or clarify, yeah, that's it, or no, it's not, or that's kind of what I said, but here's really what I mean. Because the goal is not winning, the goal is what? Connecting, understanding. Can we connect to this? Now, the other reason to do this is because most time, if this is just a knee-jerk reaction, it's just going to be that emotional defensiveness that comes in. And it's not like a 20-minute buffer. It's like 3 seconds or 6 seconds. But at least it's a little bit of time for me to tell you what you said. You to say, yes, that's it, and then reflecting back or answering or responding to what you said. It's at least a little bit of time to figure out, how am I going to respond to this? Is this kind of making sense? Now, looking through the room here. Okay. What I'm going to encourage you to do, okay, is to practice this. But you've already thought of one thing that your spouse does that's positive. Okay? And I know this may be a little bit awkward, but you kind of whisper it okay after a little bit. But think about it. Think about that thing that they do that you, I don't say appreciate because I'm trying not to give you emotion words. But to think about it, okay? And if you don't have a spouse in here, if you just want to write it down or something, or take a minute where you can say it to me, or I love it, but really frustrating when you put me on the spot. Yes. But what I'm going to encourage you to do right now, and this is the positive way. This is not bring up what happened last week, okay? This is why I'm saying think of that positive thing your spouse does. think of the emotion that goes with it. How do you feel when they do that? And if you would, just, take a, I won't say take a minute, just won't even take that, but take a few seconds, look at them, and just say, I feel really encouraged when you tell me I can dig that root out. And I know it takes me 2 hours to dig it out. I was like digging in the yard yesterday for like 2 hours to get this root out. And she sees me as like she's so supportive. And so for me, it felt very supportive. Yeah, felt very encouraged. Anyway, I'm just going to put you on the spot right now. But if you look at your spouse, think about that thing and use number one, okay? I feel when you do this, okay? Take a moment. Go ahead. More than just a skill, it becomes a tool. Is what if I can go in the same direction? And I'm not saying like never give a response back. I think some things we need to respond to, some things we need to say. But if I can go in the same direction as the other person. One time I was working with this couple, and they were sitting in my office, good couple in their mid-30s, good Christian couple, just trying to work through some stuff. And the wife, just, it wasn't what we had been talking about, but just kind of, it came out and she just said, I don't feel pretty. And her husband, did answer it the way he was supposed to, a good Christian answer, oh, you're beautiful. And he meant it. It wasn't a shallow. He meant it. But you could just kind of see her sitting there, and it didn't sit well with her. And she said it again, but I just don't feel it. And he responded again, oh, you're beautiful. Everybody thinks you are, and you just don't know. And still, he was answering the way he was supposed to. It wasn't a bad answer. He wasn't being sarcastic or hurtful. He really was listening to her. But in a sense, he was doing what? Telling her she was wrong. You're wrong for feeling it. And that's what I mean by, can I hear it? Can I reflect it back to you? But what if I go in the same direction? And that's why I use this example, because he really wasn't trying to argue with her. He wasn't trying to hurt her. He really was he meant it. You're beautiful. But he wasn't hearing her emotion. He wasn't hearing her feeling. And she felt shut down. And sometimes when we feel that way, we do what? We say it again, or we say it louder, or we say it more, or we come up with more examples, or we pull up, because you have to understand how, you're not getting how, but what if I'm going in the same direction? And so we kind of talked about it a minute, and she said it again, and, she's got tears, like, just right there, and a really tense moment. Sitting there. And she says it again. And then he says, what do I do that makes you feel better? And it wasn't a sarcastic, but what I do now, it was a very sincere, help me understand. And she said, oh, it's not you, this thing happened at work, and something happened, and so and so. And the conversation went in a really different direction. Because he wasn't telling her you're wrong for feeling it or don't feel it. He was actually saying you do feel it. How can I understand it more? And I'm not saying like every conversation we have to kind of go to. I do think there are some times where we need to come back, But I also think there are those moments when we can really hear what our spouse is saying. And we hear the hurt, or we hear the pain. We hear the woundness there. And it may have nothing to do with us. It's not me as the man trying to fix it, It's there. Can I hear the hurt? Can I reflect it back? And the conversation, I think, most time will go in a different direction. And it doesn't even mean you have to agree with what they're saying. You may think totally different about it, but it does mean you hear what they're saying. Is this kind of making sense? Mm-hmm. And it really does take in a different direction. And that's why sometimes it really may be you've got to respond to some of those things. I felt frustrated when you left the cap off the toothpaste. So you were upset when I didn't put the cap on. Yes, I was. Well, I didn't put the cap on because it fell into the toilet or something. But some of those things that go deeper, can we grab hold of those moments? Because what would happen if when you share, your deep hurts or your wounds, your emotions. And the other person can look at you and say, I understand you feel this way. And even more than that, what happens when I realize I'm the one making you feel this way? I'm the one who's hurting you. You feel this when I yell, when I scream, when I walk away, when I lash out, when I shut down, you feel because of what I'm doing. Can I hear that? And react to it. Okay? Now here's how we go deeper with this one up here. And the way we go deeper is kind of move the words around a little bit. And this is what we want to do. Is to recognize when I feel these things, I have an action. I do something. When I feel happy, I smile more, I talk more, I interact more. Why do I do those things? Because of how I feel. And we're separating out what? What we think, what we feel, and what we do. Well, out of what we think, what we feel, and what we do, the only one that we can't change is what? Do what?
How we feel.
How we feel. Yeah. And we think we can, don't we? We tell other people to do it all the time. You know, stop being mad. We do it with our kids a lot, you know. Stop being worried. Well, you can tell me not to worry about it, but tell me not to worry about it. If I'm still thinking it, I'm still going to feel it. We can't just change our feelings. We think we can. But if I change what I think, I can change what I feel. If I change what I do, I can change what I feel. I can't always just change things. And somebody telling me not to be mad because they didn't mean to do it doesn't make me feel less mad. It makes me feel more mad. And so when I feel these things, when I feel hurt, or left out, frustrated, or attacked, we do something. What is it that we do when we feel these things?
We act out.
Yeah, how do we act out?
We do it. Anger.
Do what?
Yell.
Yell, cry. Is that what I'm hearing? We cry, we yell, we lash out, we shut down, we leave. Some people get physical, slam a door, punch a hole in a wall, physical towards other people. Some people make threats. This marriage is over. I'm leaving. We're done. We do some, and why do we do these things? Because of what we feel. You know, and it's not just the negative; it's the positive too. You know, when you feel loved, when you feel encouraged, when you feel supported, what do? Gee, we reach out more, we love more, we connect more. But when it's negative, when it's hurtful, we do these things sometimes. And the other part of it is this, and this is how we make it more of a tool that we can use. When I do this, the problem is, then you feel hurt or attacked or left out, criticized. And then you have an action. And you do what? Make threats. Or leave. Or lash out. Yeah. And when you do these things, I feel this more and do it back. And what we're doing is really building upon what we talked about last week. We're just being a lot more specific with it. Can I figure out that I can't just change this, even when we want to? Sometimes it's like, man, I want to. But if we start to do something different, if we start to think something, it may. But if we really are feeling it, man, it's hard, because as much as those thoughts affect the emotions affect the thoughts. The more I feel it, the more I think it, the more I think it, the more I feel it. And so this, I can't just change. But what happens if I can change this? What if instead of yelling, what if I talk? Or what if instead of shutting down, what if I actually engage? Or what if I stay? You know? Instead of making threats, what if I listen? Because if I do this, then you're going to feel what? Validated, listened to. And it doesn't mean we even agree on it. But it means in that moment, we're making a choice to do this. And when I'm saying this, I don't want to come across like, oh, it's really easy, just do this. No, this is extremely hard because everything inside of me is telling me not to do this. Everything inside of me is telling me to do what? This. Protect myself. I'm feeling these things, and I've got to protect me. It's hard. And yet when I can manage to do this and stay engaged and stay positive and talk it through rather than fight it through, to listen, to try and understand, they're going to feel more of this and then they feel loved, validated. And then they'll do something different. And hopefully I respond to it. Paul's writing to the Ephesians, and he's really not specifically saying, okay, I'm writing to you about marriage. It's great that we're working through this book. You know, John's going through it on Sunday mornings, kind of building up. Because the whole context in the beginning is what? Who are we in Christ? And what he's calling us to do, not just Paul, but God, isn't to be perfect husbands and wives that always do the right thing on our own. It's out of reverence for him. It's his power in me. It's putting off the old self, like we read in Ephesians 4, and putting on this new self. Can I put down these words that hurt or attack this other person? Can I start to hear them more than being heard? And so the goal has to change. Okay. These are the sheets for this week. If you want to take one, pass them around. It's got all the notes on it. The other thing on there is on the back of it is like an emotion sheet. Sometimes we kind of put our emotions into what? Happy, sad, mad, afraid. You know, there's a lot more there. And we also react very differently to different emotions. Just like we talked about last week. If you tell me that you're hurt, I'm going to react differently to your hurt than I am to your anger. And so that's why I've got the emotions on the back there. On the right-hand side are positive ones. On the left-hand side are negative emotions. And negative doesn't mean like bad in themselves. They just mean they're not good feeling. You know, it doesn't always feel good to feel these things. And so we separate now, but sometimes just having a list in front of you to say, wow, when you say those things, I feel threatened. When you do that, it really encourages me. Okay, so that's why the emotions are there. But down below there are the things, and that's what I'm going to encourage you to do this week, is to kind of practice this. You know, and again, this is not like every conversation. You know, you got to say, okay, so you're telling me this. But it wouldn't be bad to practice it that way. I think this is a great thing to do with your kids, too, if you've got kids. You know what I mean? When you say to your kids, hey, why don't you go to the room, put all your shoes in the closet, hang up your clothes, and make your bed. And they can look back at you and say, okay, you want me to put my shoes in the closet, make my bed? Yes, put away my clothes. Yes, you got it. You know, rather than, okay, you know, whatever, mom, or dad. You know. But it's a great thing to do. You know, it's a great thing to do with other people. It's not just within marriage. Any thoughts or questions about this as we're talking through? Okay. Well, the other thing I would encourage you to do is, and when I'm saying this, I'm really not saying like go out and spend a bunch of money every week, but keep making time for each other. You know, it doesn't have to be date night, go out. If it is, great. You know, but if it's quality time, when the kids are in bed, you know, when it's your time, get together and talk. Let's let it be more positive. You know, if it's already positive, great. Let's keep making it more and more positive. But sharing with each other and be listening for it. You know, be listening for what are you saying to me? Can I reflect it back to you? Let's pray. Father God, we just thank you so much for this time. We thank you for how you love us and care for us. Lord, we know that you have loved us with an everlasting love, that you draw us with kindness. Lord, help us to live that out. Help us to put on the new self and put off the old self. To be compassionate, considerate, listening to what each other is saying, and responding to it in a way that's loving So, in the name of Jesus, amen. Y'all have a great week.
Like,